Today, we're exploring the differences between indie films and theatrical or studio films. To make this clear and insightful, we'll use two well-known examples: Avengers Endgame, a major studio blockbuster, and Moonlight, a groundbreaking indie film. These two films represent opposite ends of the spectrum, and comparing them gives us a deep understanding of what sets indie films apart from big studio productions. First, let's talk about budgets. One of the biggest differences between indie films and blockbuster movies is the size of their budgets. And this difference is huge. Avengers Endgame had a production budget of around $356 million. Add marketing costs, and we're looking at well over $500 million. With that kind of investment, the film could deliver top-tier visual effects, an enormous cast, and large-scale global marketing. In contrast, Moonlight was made for just $1.5 million. That's a fraction of what most big studio films spend, but it's also why Moonlight focuses on character-driven storytelling, intimate settings, and powerful emotional depth instead of expensive spectacle. Indie films often remind us that you don't need a huge budget to tell a meaningful story. Next, let's move on to marketing and distribution. Endgame was a global phenomenon. Its marketing campaign was everywhere. Trailers, billboards, brand partnerships, you name it. The film had a massive release, debuting in over 4,000 theaters across the US and rolling out simultaneously worldwide. Studio films like this rely on saturation. They want to be seen and talked about by as many people as possible, all at once. Moonlight took a very different path. Its marketing was much more targeted, relying on word of mouth, film festivals, and positive reviews. The film started with a limited release in select theaters and expanded as buzz grew. This slow build is common for indie films, which often find their audience gradually through critical praise and focused promotion. Now, let's get into storytelling approaches. Studio blockbusters tend to avoid controversial or niche topics in favor of themes that resonate with a broad audience. Endgame sticks to universal ideas like heroism, sacrifice, and friendship, ideas that almost everyone can connect with. The focus is on entertainment, not necessarily challenging social norms or sparking difficult conversations. Indie films, however, are often where we see bold explorations of complex issues. Moonlight tackles intersectional topics like race, sexuality, and masculinity within a Black community. It addresses themes of poverty, stigma, and identity in ways that mainstream films rarely do. Indie filmmakers aren't bound by commercial expectations, so they have the freedom to tell stories that might be too risky or uncomfortable for big studio films. Finally, let's talk about success, because both of these films found it, but in different ways. Endgame broke records at the box office, becoming one of the highest-grossing films of all time. Its success was driven by scale, spectacle, and delivering what fans had been waiting for after more than a decade of interconnected stories. Moonlight, however, made its mark through critical acclaim. It won multiple awards, including Best Picture at the Oscars. The film was celebrated for its artistic achievements, emotional depth, and cultural impact. This kind of recognition is where indie films often shine. They may not dominate the box office, but they have a lasting influence due to the stories they tell and the voices they amplify. So, what's the takeaway? Indie films like Moonlight stand out for their creative freedom, focus on character-driven narratives, and willingness to tackle challenging subjects. In contrast, blockbuster films like Avengers Endgame excel at delivering large-scale, plot-driven entertainment designed for broad appeal. Both types of films serve different purposes in the world of cinema, catering to different audiences, while each bringing something valuable to the table. I hope this comparison gave you a better understanding of the unique strengths of indie versus studio films.